Welcome to the Alcohol Reset, the podcast that helps you reset your habits, health, and relationship with alcohol without judgment or extremes. If you're looking to cut back, take a break, or just understand how drinking can affect your body and mind, you're in the right place. Each episode brings you science-backed insights on neuroscience, nutrition, and habit change to help you feel better, sleep deeper, and take control on your terms. I'm Mike Hardenbrook, best-selling author, neuroscience enthusiast, and habit change expert. I've helped thousands through my book and podcast to rethink their drinking, and now I'm here to help you do the same. Let's get started. All right, so you know that feeling, right? End of a long day, maybe it's been a crazy week, you just want to unwind, and a drink. It just seems like the perfect way to do it, to take the edge off. Or you're out with some friends, catching up, and the drinks. They're flowing. They're helping everyone loosen up a bit, becoming the, I guess you could say, the social lubricant of the evening. We're all looking for ways to enjoy these moments, right? But have you ever actually stopped to think about what that regular drink or those few drinks, what they're doing to you mentally? Like in the big picture, that's what we're going to look at today, the real connection between alcohol and your mind. We all know that first drink can bring on a good feeling, a little happy buzz, maybe you feel more relaxed. It's that dopamine hit. But we got to go beyond that initial feeling, beyond that quick hit. We need to really get into how alcohol is interacting with our brains in a bigger way and a longer lasting way. What we're aiming for today, it's really to understand how alcohol is messing with our emotions. And just as importantly, we're going to arm you with some practical knowledge so you can make smarter choices about when and how much you drink. Oh, we're also going to touch on how something like L-theanine, like what you find in Cloud9, could actually play a part in keeping your mind in a good place, even if you do decide to have a few drinks. So first things first, we got to lay down some groundwork, the basics. Alcohol, it's a central nervous system depressant, basically. Think of it like it's turning down the volume on your brain's activity. And that has a direct impact on your mood. Now, in the short term, like we touched on earlier, there's that dopamine release, that initial good feeling. You relax a bit, but then you have another drink, maybe another one after that. And that's where the depressant effect really starts to take over. Your judgment, not as sharp. Your emotions, they can get a bit unpredictable. And, maybe your coordination isn't what it usually is. We've all seen it, right? But it's the long-term stuff that we really need to think about. Drinking regularly, it can actually mess up your brain's natural chemistry, like throw it off balance. And that can make you more likely to feel anxious or even depressed down the line. Now, the thing is, some people, they start using alcohol as a way to cope with these difficult emotions. And that can turn into a pretty unhealthy cycle pretty fast. There's a ton of research out there about the link between alcohol and conditions like anxiety and depression, and it's pretty clear. There's a strong connection. Let's look at anxiety first. It's kind of ironic, right? Lots of people grab a drink because they think it'll calm their nerves, especially if they're in a social situation. But the research actually shows that if you drink heavily, it can actually make anxiety disorders worse. There's data out there that shows people who struggle with alcohol use disorder. They often report feeling way more anxious than folks who don't drink. So it's almost like you're borrowing that calmness in the short term, but you end up paying a much bigger price for it later on. And then you've got depression. The research has found a link between how much alcohol someone drinks and a higher risk of becoming depressed. And this can be a really tough cycle to escape. Someone might be feeling down and they haven't drank to try and forget about those feelings, but the alcohol itself, it can actually make you feel even sadder. And that can lead to a downward spiral. You're looking for a temporary escape, but you often end up making things a lot worse in the long run. Now let's talk about stress. Who hasn't reached for a drink after a long, stressful day? It's super common. People use alcohol to unwind, to de-stress. And that first drink, it might feel like it's taking the edge off. But here's the thing, that relief, it's fleeting. It doesn't stick around. And even more important, it's not doing anything to solve the things that are actually stressing you out in the first place. In fact, if you're drinking consistently, it can actually make your stress levels even worse over time. It affects how your brain works and how balanced you feel emotionally. So basically, you're less able to deal with stress in healthy ways. You might think you found a quick fix, but what you're really doing is digging yourself a deeper hole. And we can't forget about sleep. A lot of people, they swear by that nightcap. They think it helps them drift off to sleep. But honestly, alcohol really messes with how well you sleep. You might fall asleep faster, but it's messing with those deep, restful sleep stages, the ones your body and mind really need to recharge. And we all know what happens when you don't sleep well, right? You wake up feeling groggy, on edge, more stressed, and more anxious, and that just sets you up for another day of wanting to reach for a drink to cope. It's a vicious cycle. So, how is alcohol actually doing all of this? How is it creating these effects in our brains? Well, a lot of it comes down to neurotransmitters. These are the chemical messengers in your brain. They're how different parts of your brain talk to each other, and they play a huge role in how you feel emotionally. Alcohol, it throws a wrench in the works by impacting a couple of really important neurotransmitters, GABA and glutamate. GABA, think of it as the chill out chemical. It's what helps you relax. And alcohol, it actually boosts how active GABA is. That's part of why you feel more mellow after a drink. But here's the other side of the coin. Alcohol is also suppressing glutamate, and that's the neurotransmitter to get your brain fired up. So you've got this push and pull happening, and yeah, it leads to some of those short-term effects we were talking about before. But if you're drinking a lot, over time, it can lead to some long-term changes in your mood and your behavior. Your brain is trying to adjust to this imbalance, and that can have some negative consequences. And then there's dopamine. Remember how we talked about that initial rush of dopamine? That's what makes you feel good after that first drink. But here's the catch. If you're drinking a lot over a long time, your brain can actually start making less dopamine on its own. And that could have a big impact. It could affect your motivation, make it hard to enjoy the things you usually do, and it can contribute to feeling down or depressed. It's like your brain gets so used to getting that artificial dopamine boost from alcohol that it forgets how to make its own. And then you could end up in a situation where you need alcohol just to feel normal, to feel any kind of pleasure. Now, something really important to remember is that we're all different. We all have different genetics, and that plays a big role in how alcohol affects us. Some people are just naturally more sensitive to alcohol's effects just because of their genes. And if you've got a family history of mental health issues or alcohol use disorder, it means you might be more likely to experience some of those same issues. So knowing your family history, it's a really good thing. It helps you make more informed decisions about your own drinking. It doesn't mean your future is set in stone, but it's definitely something to be aware of. All right, so we spent a lot of time on the potential downsides of alcohol, right? Let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about something that could actually help you out. L-theanine. Now, this is an amino acid, and you find it naturally in green tea, but it's also a key ingredient in all of our products. What's cool about L-theanine is that it helps you relax, but it doesn't make you sleepy. It's not like a sedative or anything. It just kind of chills you out. It eases that tension. So how does it do that? Well, research has shown that L-theanine can boost those same neurotransmitters we were just talking about, GABA and serotonin. Those are the guys in your brain that help lower anxiety and make you feel more peaceful and balanced. So this can be really helpful if you've been drinking because it might help with some of those edgy, restless feelings you can get as the alcohol starts to wear off. And get this, some studies are even saying that L-theanine can be good for your mental health overall, and that it can even help you focus better. So it's like a natural way to relax and boost your mood at the same time. Not bad, right? Okay, we've covered a lot, so let's get practical. What are some things you can actually do to take care of your mental health, even if you decide to have a drink? Well, first and foremost, moderation is key. Seriously. If you keep your drinking in check, you're going to dramatically reduce your risk of experiencing those negative mental health effects we've been talking about. The general rule of thumb, it's no more than 1 drink a day for women and no more than 2 for men. Keep it within those limits, and you're doing yourself a huge favor. And don't forget to hydrate. Drink plenty of water along with those alcoholic drinks. Dehydration can really mess with your mood and make it hard to think straight. And remember, your brain is already working hard to process that alcohol, so give it a little help. Another tip, try eating something before you start drinking. It can actually slow down how fast your body absorbs the alcohol, and that means it won't hit you as hard, both mentally and emotionally. You avoid those sudden spikes in blood alcohol levels, which can definitely affect your mood. Now, this one's important. Pay attention to how alcohol is making you feel. In the hours and days after you've been drinking, notice how you're feeling. Do you get more anxious? Do you feel down? If you start to see a pattern, well, maybe it's time to rethink how much you're drinking. Maybe there are some situations where you just decide not to drink at all. And you know what? There are so many awesome non-alcoholic options out there now. Mocktails, non-alcoholic beers and wines, all sorts of stuff. You can still enjoy the social side of things without the downsides. And of course, it's super important to have healthy ways to deal with stress that don't involve alcohol. Exercise, meditation, spending time with good people, those are all way better, more sustainable ways to manage life's ups and downs and keep your mind to a good place. And hey, we talked about it before, but maybe think about adding a supplement like L-theanine to your routine. It could help you relax, ease that anxiety, especially after you've had a few drinks, And less, but definitely not least, if you're struggling. I mean, if you're dealing with anxiety or depression that just won't quit, or if you feel like alcohol is starting to become a problem, please reach out to a mental health professional. They are there for you. They can help you figure things out. They can give you tools to deal with what you're going through. And there's absolutely no shame in asking for help. It can actually be life-changing. So let's wrap this up. Yeah, that glass of wine or beer, it might seem like a quick way to relax or to loosen up when you're with people. But we can't ignore the fact that alcohol can have a big impact on our mental health. And it's not just temporary, it can be long lasting. So making good choices about when and how much you drink, well, that's a really important part of taking care of yourself. I hope what we talked about today gives you some things to think about. Maybe you'll consider those calming supplements like L-theanine, the ones we put in Cloud9. And I really encourage you to take some time to think about your own relationship with alcohol. How are you managing your stress right now? What are you doing to stay mentally healthy? Maybe spend a little time figuring out how different things you're doing and different things you're putting in your body are affecting you. Thanks for exploring this with me today. That's a wrap for today's episode. If you got something out of this, do me a quick favor, leave a rating and review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. It helps keep the show going and would mean the world to me. Got ideas, comments, or questions? Shoot me an email at mike@trycloud9.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're looking for extra support, check out Cloud9, makers of Daily Restore, a once-a-day supplement to support your body from alcohol's effects, and Rise and Unwind AM/PM, a 24-hour combo to curb cravings, balance mood, and improve sleep when taking a break. Go to trycloud9.com and use the code PODCAST to save 15% on your next order. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.